Peace, peace, peace. What it is, fam? It's your boy Tyvon Sueno, aka the Orthodox Moor, aka the Seven Pillar Saracen. Shalom alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Um, Real quick, I wanted to do a show on an interesting concept based on an interview I just had and some conversations going on in the community. Recently on Debate Talk for You, I was able to interview a Lemba brother from the Buba clan named Kohen Hamendishe. Very beautiful brother, very good interview, very beautiful conversation, fantastic conversation. I will be putting that conversation up on this channel, but you can go check it out on Debate Talk for You. I'll link it down below as well. He also had a fantastic conversation with Sister E on her channel. I'll also link that down below. But something that came up in both conversations between Sister E and myself and the brother Kohen Hamendishe was the concept of the brother Kohen Hamendishe said that he believes that there were Lemba on the slave ships in America. One more time, he said that there were Lemba. He believed that there were Lemba that ended up on slave ships in America. And this was interesting based upon recent conversations about people claiming to be Israelite in America, claiming to have links with the Lemba DNA, etc., whatnot, which I'll get into on a whole nother conversation. But what I wanted to address here was something that I heard some apologists say, some Christian apologists say, in the urban apologetics community, say concerning the concept of the Lemba not being involved in the transatlantic slave trade. So I wanted to just quickly point out something that I learned about after having talked with the brother Kohen Hamendishe, in trying to understand the plausibility of what he was saying. Is it possible and is it plausible that Lemba did make it to the Americas via the transatlantic slave trade? And so real quick, I would just like to share what I've learned. So this won't be too long. I'm gonna make this real short and sweet. But the Lemba and the transatlantic slave trade, East African slaves taken to the West. Oh, hold on real quick. I might have to just do it like this and cheat. So we're Lemba enslaved in the Americas. Again, like I said, Kohen Hamendishe, Lemba tribesman from the Buba clan, says that he believes that there were Lemba on slave ships to the Americas. Some claiming an Israelite identity in America are also claiming a genetic tie to the Lemba. Is this even possible or plausible? There we go. Were East Africans taken to the West? East Africa was a late participant in the transatlantic slave trade. This is something that I recently found out, and you can see this in the article that I have linked down below. It's also cited at the bottom of the page. But yeah, most of this information comes from one article and some other stuff. But this is an interesting find that I just recently found. So East Africa was a late participant in the transatlantic slave trade. In the 1770s, the French began to regularly trade in slaves in the French islands of Mauritius and Reunion Islands east of Madagascar in the Indian Ocean, from points on the East African coast. Okay, so let me read that one more time. That in the 1770s, the French began to regularly trade in slaves in the French islands of Mauritius and Reunion from points on the East African coast. Slaves were taken in small number for a century prior to that. But when planters in Saint-Domingue, a French colony on what is now Haiti, demanded more labor, this slave trade, again being from East Africa, became more regular and systematic. Okay, so in the 1770s, a regular slave trade was established from from East Africa to what is now Haiti by the French. It took slaves from Mozambique. This is the areas where they took them from East Africa, right off the coast, and started taking them to Mauritius and etc. whatnot, and then taking them to Saint Domingue, etc. It took slaves from Mozambique ports 120 days to reach Saint Domingue. While 30% of the slaves died on the long Middle Passage, it still soon became a profitable route. So 30% of the slaves would die on this 120-day journey to what is now Haiti. However, it was still profitable for the French to take slaves from East Africa and do such. Soon, a triangular slave trade developed between the western port cities of France in Bordeaux and Nantes and in Saint Domingue in East Africa. The slaves were exchanged for sugar, coffee, and indigo. During the 1780s, the vessels used to transport these slaves grew to be able to carry up to 1,000 slaves. Between 1789 and 1790, the triangular transatlantic East African slave trade reached its peak when 46 ships carrying more than 16,000 slaves circumnavigated the Cape. Almost all of these ships were bound for the sugar and coffee plantations of northern Saint Domingue. So real quick, this is a picture of the French triangular slave trade from East Africa to what is now Haiti that I'm talking about. So you can see the French ports in West France, Nantes and Bordeaux. You can see Mozambique. You can see this island of Mauritius. Near it is the island of Reunion, and they would sail all the way to Haiti, drop off slaves and whatnot. And then France would get, again, the sugar and the coffee and etc. whatnot, the indigo, etc. So most of us know about the triangular slave trade between West Africa and the Caribbean, but most of us are not aware that there was an East African triangular slave trade going to the Caribbean. That took a minute for me to have it sink in myself when I figured that out. I was like, wow, okay. I'm just learning this and understanding that there's an East African slave trade that was triangular in this sense. Moving forward, many of the slaves that were taken from the coast of Mozambique had been seized or sold from deep within the interior of East Africa. Deep within the interior of East Africa. It took 35 days to make it from Mozambique to Cape Town in South Africa. Slaves thought not strong enough to make the journey to Saint Domingue were sold in Cape Town. In some cases, all the slaves were sold at the Cape. In the 1980s, the remains of the Portuguese slave ship, the São José, were found off the coast of Cape Town. Discoveries through South African and Portuguese archives confirm that the São José had set sail from Lisbon, Portugal in April of 1794 and had sunk off the coast of Cape Town in December of 1794, with 212 of the 400 to 500 slaves aboard as cargo having died in the event. The ship was heading from Portuguese Mozambique to colonial Brazil. Two years after the São José sank off the coast of Cape Town. Matter of fact, I'm gonna have to fix that real quick, just because I'm that kind of dude. 2 years after the São José sank off the coast of Cape Town, merchants at Mozambique Island opened up a new slave trade with the Americas, sending slaves to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and the Spanish Viceroyalty of Rio de la Plata, which consisted of lands in modern day. I've got to fix that one more time. My fault, fam. Fixing it on the fly. But I got to make it look pretty for you. You know what I'm saying. which consisted of lands in modern-day Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Paraguay, and Uruguay. So after the French were doing their thing, you had the Portuguese taking slaves also to Brazil, and slaves ended up also in Spanish lands, in the Spanish viceroyalty, in a large plot of land. Check this out. Look at this. So again, you have slaves taken from deep within the interior of Africa. Now you got Mozambique right here, and you got Zimbabwe right there. So right off the top, it's extremely plausible that Lemba, who were in that video with Cohen Hamadisha, in both videos with me and Sister E, he breaks down the fact that the Lemba migrated from Israel to Yemen, from Yemen to Mozambique, and from Mozambique to Zimbabwe. So right off the top, it's very plausible that Lemba in Mozambique and in Zimbabwe were taken in the slave trade over to what is now Haiti. But after that, you got slaves from the same area ending up in Brazil and this viceroyalty of Rio de la Plata. And again, look at how big of area this is. That's huge. That's huge. Again, Bolivia, Paraguay, Uruguay, Argentina, in Chile, like huge area. So right off the top, we have East African slaves taken from Mozambique and the interior thereof, confirmed to be taken to French plantations in the West, Portuguese plantations in the West, and also the Spanish viceroyalty in the West. So 3 different European countries had East African slaves in the West. Not just East African slaves, but East African slaves from Mozambique and the interior, where the Lemba said they migrated to. East African slaves taken from the Mozambique coast and the interior of Africa would have been present during the slave insurrection of the Haitian Revolution, which took place from 1791 to 1804 in the French colony of Saint-Domingue. Now check this out. Planters from Saint-Domingue, seeking refuge from the revolution, migrated to the territory of Orleans. Now this was previously under French rulership. It went to the Spanish, and then it was sold in the Louisiana Purchase, right? So we're talking about Mississippi, Louisiana, all that, etc. Right? The largest. Hold on, excuse me. They migrated to the territory of Orleans with their African slaves. So the planters from Saint-Domingue, seeking refuge from the Haitian Revolution, migrated to the territory of Orleans with their African slaves. The largest slave rebellion in U.S. history took place in the territory of Orleans in 1811. So from 1791 to 1804, you got planters from Saint-Domingue fleeing Saint-Domingue because of the Haitian Revolution, and they're seeking refuge in the nearest French territories, right? Or what would have been French territories, right? Or where there were French people, etc., right? In the territory of Orleans. They show up with their slaves. And after a while, you have the big, like after you have the huge slave revolt resulting in the slaves getting the land they revolted. You have the people from the same area going to where what ended up being the biggest slave revolt in U.S. history happened shortly after they arrived. I find that to be extremely interesting. Extremely interesting. So we got the Haitian Revolution, and we have that uprising in Orleans, right? I believe it's called the Georgia Coast Rebellion, something of that nature. Or not the Georgia, excuse me, the German coast. In 1811, right? But again, were the Lemba enslaved in the Americas? I honestly don't know. Further genetic testing would need to be done to conclusively answer that question. However, is this even possible or plausible? Yes, it is very much so, 100%. Given the slave trade done by the French and others from Mozambique to the Americas, it's 100% possible and 100% plausible. And what's even more interesting is when you look into it, go check out some DNA studies from people from Haiti on YouTube. You'll find out that they have a large percentage of their DNA coming from East Africa, Southeast Africa at that. Large percentages. So in some of my brothers and sisters in North America, they're finding that they have like 10 to 15% of their DNA connected to Southeast Africa, right? However, in Haiti, I've seen people with almost half of their DNA going back to Southeast Africa. My late father used to be a minister, and he did some outreach with some Haitian people and whatnot. And they would come over to his house like 20, 30 deep. And it was interesting looking at their phenotypes, because when I was when I compared some of their phenotypes to some of the phenotypes that I saw amongst the brothers and sisters around Kohen Hamadishe, I saw a very big similarity and whatnot. And so, like I said, is it possible? 100%. Is it plausible? 100%. Is it proven? No, not yet. Not at all. However, it can be falsified and it can be proven. But what's interesting is that no matter how you slice it, there's an interesting concept of what's going on in some of the people's DNA that you're seeing that are claiming to be Israelite in North America, and also claiming some link to the Lemba. You're seeing that they have DNA that does go back to East Africa and Southeast Africa at that, in a large percentage. So if nothing else, it indicates some form of migration from the area that needs to be taken into account. It needs to be understood totally and completely. Again, everybody wasn't taken from the same part of Africa at the same time. And that needs to be understood. So once again, were the Lembas enslaved in the Americas? It's not conclusive. Don't know yet. But it's something that can be gotten to the bottom of genetically. And it's something that can be conclusively understood genetically. So with that, I'm not going to keep y'all family. I'm going to keep this somewhat short and sweet. But I just wanted to get this one out there. Because like I said, I heard some apologists talking about that. Even if the Lemba had Kohanim DNA or whatnot, it wouldn't matter to certain Israelites in America, because the Lemba weren't involved in the slave trade. They weren't in the slave trade. They didn't come to the Americas. And again, I'm not saying it's conclusive that they came to the Americas. I'm saying it's very possible and plausible. For my brothers and sisters who are connecting themselves to the Lemba or whatnot. If you weren't aware of this information, hopefully this edified you in some way, shape, or form. If you were aware of this information and you have more information, please get at me, because I'm interested in understanding the plausibility of this story. Because I thought the brother Kohen Hamadishe was 100% sincere when he said that he believed that Lemba ended up in the slave ships in America. I asked him, because I'm aware of different presences in East Africa. I asked him if the Dutch, the Portuguese, and the Arabs had enslaved Lemba. He was like, he believed, yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's very, very possible The East African slave trade was very, very active for a long time, and it didn't take Europeans long to participate once they figured out the route. So, given that concept, this is a very, very plausible idea that Lemba did make it to the Americas. Very plausible. And anyone saying that it's not plausible would have to demonstrate that East Africans did not make it to French colonies to French, Spanish, and Portuguese colonies in the Americas. Again, there's slave ships that are documented in South Africa and in Portugal involved in such a trade. That's not me saying that. That's not some pseudo person saying that. That's these countries that did these studies looking into their information saying this. So I got the link in the chat if anybody wants to jump in. Please feel free to jump in. I'll drop it one more time. I see a couple people are watching. If not, I'm just going to end it right here. But yeah, it's extremely plausible that Lemba made it to the Americas. And to say that it's not possible is to be ignorant of the history of the slave trade. But with that, family, I will say peace and love.